This is the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we teach you the proven methods to grow your seven-figure business to 10 million and beyond. Please welcome your host, Brett Gilliland.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm really excited about today's episode. I probably say that every time. That's okay. I'm still excited because we're doing something a little different today. Typically, I have a guest who is more than likely a business owner of a 7 or 8 figure business, well into 7 figures, thinking back on their journey from 1 to 3 million and what that was like and sharing lessons learned. And or once in a while, I'll take an episode to do what I call a solo cast, where I'm just sharing a concept that I think would be useful to all of you based on working with hundreds of business owners like you. Today, what's a little different, first time we've ever done this, is that I'm bringing a team member to be with me today. So it's not a solo cast. Maybe we'll call it a dynamic duo cast or something. But let me introduce her, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what this episode is going to be. So welcome, Miranda Daigneault, to the show today. I'm glad you're here.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to get to be a part of this podcast. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It is going to be a lot of fun. Miranda has been part of our Elite Entrepreneurs team for a little over 2 years now, a couple years, a couple months, something like that. And she's great to have. She's an amazing team player. She's one of our elite business coaches. She's led our marketing efforts. She's just one of those solid people to have around, and we're grateful that she's here. Miranda, today, and you know this, but let me say it to you as a way to set it up for everyone else. Today, You're going to represent a role that you've had before, and that is the key role of that right-hand person, or that operations leader, or that office manager, or that key person. Fill in the blank of your favorite job title. But many business owners have created like a hub and spoke model at first, where they're the hub and they make it all go, and they start hiring a team, and so they've got people they can start to give tasks to, but eventually they recognize that I'm stuck in my own creation, and unless I get out, this can't grow any further. And they have this genius idea, I'm way better as the visionary. I don't really want to be stuck in all the details. I need a strong, operationally minded person, an operations leader, a right-hand person to come in and take all the stuff off my plate so that I can just be this creative genius and build the business and do strategic partnerships and maybe product work or high-level fulfillment of our product or service or whatever. And so we hire a Miranda and we say, Miranda, come save my world, right? Come make it so much easier. So now that I've kind of set that up, why don't you tell us a little bit, because this isn't your role at Elite Entrepreneurs, but you have played that role before, and it is what makes you a super valuable coach for us in our business, is that you've been right there on the front lines, in the trenches, with the 7-figure business owner, seeing it all, feeling it all, experiencing it all. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that business, that role, and then we'll get into unpacking what I think is going to be super valuable for folks today.
Yeah, I love that. So that role, I was the right-hand person, right? Whatever you might call it, director of operations, we called it at the time, for a naturopathic physician. So I started at that job at the front desk. I won't give you the whole history, but I started at the front desk. I was there for a while and just showed up and kept doing a good job. And then one day the manager there decided to leave, and she and the owner of the practice said, we think Miranda can do it. So we're gonna let her take a crack at this thing, right? Which is often what happens. I'm including that detail because it's often what happens in the businesses that we work with at Elite, right? The person who is head of operations may or may not have any experience in doing that thing or, running a business or, leading a team or whatever, when they can get put in that spot. So that's what happened to me. And so I led that practice, and the entire team, everybody there And I did that for a few years. While I was doing that, we also grew an online business basically from scratch. So we had the clinic and everybody there. That was a thriving practice. It was a 7-figure business. And then we grew an online business at the same time. We had a small newsletter list. And by the time I left leading both of those, what ended up being separate businesses, right? At first they were together and then we broke them apart. But by the time I left there, they both were 7-figure businesses. So there were quite a lot of like steps along that path, but generally speaking, that was sort of my role there at that place.
Okay, so the owner is a physician, a doctor,
Yep.
and the owner was like, there was a manager, and then that person's leaving, and they said, okay, Miranda she's it. Like she has the skills, she has the ability. Might have to train her, give her experience, or whatever. But they picked you for the role, and then eventually, like that led to you being the right hand and helping to build this other business, and then you're the director of operations for these 2 7-figure businesses. That's quite an impressive feat to be able to manage that. Talk to us about what it was like to work with that business owner. Well, first, I mean, when a business owner decides I need some help with somebody to run the operations, what was the version of that like for you?
But yeah, when they asked me to sort of take that role on.
Or how did he view his role compared to your role? Like, how would he characterize that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So he would certainly think of himself as like the visionary and me as like the implementer. And in fact, we had that conversation, right? We talked about rocket fuel, right? At the time. So it's the conversation of he was the visionary and I was the implementer. And I think we had a really harmonious relationship in each of those roles with each other at the time. He really was and still is a visionary. He's a brilliant man and is always thinking ahead and creating, and really, really smart man. And likes to create things, likes the idea of building new things, or shooting for the moon. That was one of our core values there, actually, which I helped the team create core values while I was there, but that was one of them. Right, so it was always like big dreams, big goals, big aspirations, and would hit them over and over again, like high achiever. And he frankly didn't have time and didn't want to spend time in the minutia of the details of everything else. So he was really great at vision setting, even though I didn't understand vision setting the way I do now with my experience at Elite, but he was really great at vision setting and continuing to put that vision in front of us. He did that so effortlessly, and maybe after we had worked together, he was doing that intentionally. At first, I think it just came so natural to him, right? So he was great at that. And my sort of job in all of it was to make sure, everybody else was on the same page. And sort of, he just trusted me to figure out how to get stuff done. Even if I had no experience, which I clearly didn't, he just had all the faith in the world that whatever project or thing or whatever he put in front of me, I would figure out. And so that's sort of how he saw me and what he leaned on me to do while I was there. He had big goals and aspirations, and he was like, hey, Miranda, I want to do this. Sometimes he would be like, here's how I'm thinking we go about it. And sometimes he would be like, go figure it out, like I'm going to circle back and ask you how that's coming. So that was sort of the way that it came together.
Okay, that's helpful. Before you stepped into that role, there was somebody prior to you who was in there. Yep. And you weren't there for this time that I'm about to describe, but imagine the time when there wasn't an implementer, when there wasn't a manager, when there wasn't a director of operations there, and the doctor needing to handle all of those details. Because you came to work closely with him and knew him pretty well. How might that have looked without that person there?
I have a little bit of an idea, right? I knew him well and worked closely with him for a long time. So he used to be a one-man show, right? Like even as a physician, he had a little office, and he would talk back in the day when he had the little office, and he would do all the things, right? He would see people, he would schedule them, he would follow up, he would do the IVs, like, all of it. He was every step in the process. And then he slowly added a little bit of help, right? So then he had somebody that would come in sometimes and they would do whatever the next piece of the puzzle. And then he would, added the next person and the next. And then it got to a place where they were at the practice that we were. And I'm sure that it really was like, the owner or the physician, and then whoever the second person was, like that person pretty much had to level up to, office manager, right? That person had to grow along. And there was someone before the person before me had to grow along in that role. And then he could sort of place in the other things, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. So it's sort of like front desk / everything else. And then that person grew to be, operations, and then they filled in the rest of the team.
And in this case, being a physician, his highest value is seeing and treating patients. That's right. So every minute he has to schedule or follow up or bill or code or whatever the other activities were, was time away from the thing that drove the most value in that business. And so he learned he didn't want to spend time on the lower level activity, not lower level, but the lower cost activities, the lower value driving activities. Yep. And so he built up a team, and then he realized, now I'm spending too much of my time coordinating all this stuff, and I need somebody who can come in and capably do that. So you end up in that spot eventually. What if you could, go back in your memory a little bit, just what did you find, if anything, what was frustrating about you working with a visionary business owner who was going presumably, shiny object or multiple directions or had big plans? What was difficult for your, this right-hand person, this director of operations role that you were in? What was challenging about working with a stereotypical visionary leader?
Yeah, great question. Like so many people, one of the most amazing things about them also sometimes can be one of the most challenging things about them, right? We are all guilty of that. So, and if he heard this, I think he would probably laugh at me saying that, but he was such a beautiful visionary and still is to this day. And, what can be challenging about that is like the pace of trying to keep up with it was really difficult. Like there were numerous, to I don't know, try to be more specific, there were numerous projects that we would start and then we wouldn't complete. And we would start every project with so much excitement and enthusiasm, right? Like it was like, this is going to be the thing, Miranda, like this is going to be amazing. Here's how we're going to go after it. Here's what we're going to go do. And you can imagine how busy I was, like just leading the practice.
I don't want to imagine. Yeah, let's hear about it. So
yeah, is a full-time job, right? Like there were, depending on the time, there was anywhere from like 10-ish team members there, including other physicians. And there was a lab, and there were front desk people, and there were medical assistants. And like, so that operation alone was so many moving parts and lots of little divisions, more than you would for a smaller team. Even like there's just a lot of details to track. It's sensitive information, right? There's like patient stuff. I had to know about like OSHA and, like safety things and like billing. And we didn't contract with insurance, but still there's like so many details and things to manage. And then it was also like, hey, we're going to start this newsletter thing, and we're going to start sending emails to people. And okay, that sounds cool. We're going to do that. I think that the sending of the newsletter happened a little bit before I, became the manager of everything. So it's like that. And then it was like, okay, now we're going to intentionally like go after building this list, and we're going to do that thing. And we checked those boxes, right? We we moved forward, we progressed towards our goals with the online business, but you can imagine how there were lots of different ideas of ways that we could grow that thing, and not all of them worked. Like, he was also new to the online business space, and we had different ideas of things that we could do to sell or grow or create a course or create a challenge. And we would put in a lot of energy and effort to make these things happen, and frankly, make them happen quickly. And there were many times that we would do that, And before it was even complete, we would sort of be on to the next project. And although there were lots of rewarding moments in making things happen that I didn't even know I could be a part of, there were also many moments where it was exhausting to start a big project, feel the weight of the responsibility of making that thing happen. And that's specific to the right-hand person. Like that feeling, that feeling of pressure, the feeling of, if you have a great right-hand person, they feel the weight of your business way more than you think they do. Do you know what I mean? Like if you have somebody in that spot that really cares and really hustles and really wants to do a good job, like they feel the pressure of the success of any project or anything that you hand over to them. And when you have somebody who feels that way about your business and that you trust them to go charge after things, and then, you pivot or they don't even quite get to complete the project, it's exhausting, right? Like it feels like you just, the hamster in the wheel thing, right? Where it's like, I'm never going to like catch up to the end of it. At Elite, we talk about quarterly goals, right? We'll just use that simple term. And, I meet with you, Brett, every quarter, and we look back on how I did the quarter before. We didn't have a system like that in place. And it's not because the owner didn't care and didn't want me to feel good about what I did. We just didn't have that system in place. So to me, it felt like working tirelessly and never really like being acknowledged or having, and that's probably too general. Like he acknowledged me in my work sometimes, right? But we didn't have that rhythm or that consistency of stopping and looking back at what we got done. It was always like, just go for more and go for more and go for more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think you're painting the picture really clearly. So if I'm a visionary leader listening to you right now, what would you like for me to understand about how fun or exciting it is to work with a visionary leader? Let's start there. Like, because I've seen it in your face. I've heard it in your voice. There's some energy that comes in when you think about, you talked about how smart he was and how visionary. Like it was great in all these ways. I'd like for you to tell visionary leaders the plus or the pro side of working so closely with somebody like that for just a minute.
Good. I'm glad you asked that question, because I wouldn't want the message that I'm sharing in this perspective to be like, don't go chase your dreams, right? Like, don't be like, tone down your visionariness, right? Like that, I would never want that to be the message, because there were really beautiful things about it. One, in like, not everybody is a visionary, right? And when you aren't that kind of person, it's really, I don't know, exciting or rewarding to be tied to a cause with someone that is a visionary. You get to have that feeling of, you have somebody sort of encouraging or pulling out of you that sort of like dream bigger idea, right? And when that doesn't come natural to you, which it doesn't come natural to everyone, right? And quite often when you work for someone else, that's not something like, entrepreneurs have that visionary thing, right? So when you're a team member, you don't always have that visionary thing. And to work closely with someone that wants to shoot for the moon, wants to dream bigger and achieve more, it's exciting to sort of come along for that ride. It's a really beautiful thing. So that is one part of it that I would call out. The other thing that I would call out that I imagine is a similar experience for other right-hand people, maybe not all, but I imagine it's there, is like his faith in me, his belief in me was, like pivotal for my growth and development as a person. I wouldn't be here today doing what I do if he hadn't seen potential in me and believed in me to make stuff happen. Like the way that he would, share ideas or projects or whatever it is that we were working on, he would share them with me. And there was no question in his mind if I could figure it out. He had zero doubt Like he knew that I had no idea what I was doing. He knew. And at the end of the day, he still was like, yeah, you're going to go do this. Like, this is going to be great. It's going to be awesome. Isn't it going to be cool when we go do this thing together, like this idea, and we make it happen? Isn't that going to be amazing, Miranda? Right? Like, it's just that faith, it pulled something out of me that wouldn't be there if I wouldn't have spent that time with him. Truly pivotal moment in my life.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't know that every visionary business owner gets to fully appreciate what you just expressed. I hope that we're giving a little bit of a gift there to them, that their ability to see bigger possibilities and allow others to have the thrill of that ride and be part of that ride is amazing. And on top of that, what you just expressed very meaningfully, thank you for doing so, is that same belief about what is possible in the future. Sounds like he was able to use that same belief to unlock some abilities in you and bring out something in you that maybe you weren't even aware that you could go do. And he just believed that you could do it. And that led to a lot of growth.
That's it. And, you think about conversations I've had with 7-figure business owners about their team. They invest so much in their team and want to do right by them and want them to do well. And it feels so deeply personal sometimes when a team member leaves, right? Especially one that you care about. And I guess I would encourage them to consider that perspective, right? Like, even if a team member is with you only for so much time and then they move on to whatever the next thing is, man, like, remember how huge it is to make that difference for someone, right? Like, wherever that team member goes, whatever they are a part of next, they're going to be better off because of the time that they spent with you. And it really taps into that like exponential difference that you can make into the world. And that doesn't matter. That's not even talking about what your business does, right? Like, that's not even talking about like the fulfillment of the product or the thing that you actually do. That's just because of the time that your team members get to spend with you.
Yeah, that's great. All right, let's switch over to the other side of the paper. I've got pros on one side, cons on the other, or let's just say they're not cons. Let's just call them like reality, right? So the reality is there's some really awesome things about working so closely with the visionary. There might be what I'll call some wake or some unintended consequences of that big push, that big energy, that big dreaming, that moving from one opportunity to another that could affect others in the team, and especially this right-hand person, this key role in their business. So and we're not here to like bash on your former amazing visionary leader. We're just here to paint a picture so that other visionary leaders can understand what it might be like in that right-hand position. I heard you use the term exhaustion earlier. I heard you talk about not always finishing things that we start, which might have some demoralizing sort of effects on a team member. I heard you mention not really knowing if you were doing the thing, not stopping long enough to look back and see progress or accomplishment or whatever. And I don't want to be putting words in your mouth, but those were some of the things I heard you saying. How would you add to what I just said, or take this in a different direction? But
yeah, one way that I would add to what you said is, and I shared this with you once before, but it's been a while. One of the things that we teach at Elite is Big Three, and I don't need to go into the details of that right now, but essentially it's getting really clear about what success looks like for each role, right? Like what objectives each team member should hit, right? In the simplest form. And one thing that I think business owners forget about, or maybe have never experienced. There are many business owners that I work with now that have never worked for somebody else. They've always done their own thing. They truly don't even they can't even tap into what it might feel like to work for someone else because they've never been there, right? And others, you're either in that box, or most, by the time they get to working with us, are so far away from that game that they have forgotten what it feels like to work for someone else. And the truth of the matter is that when you work for someone else, in a small way, you are putting your fate in their hands. Like, I get it. We're all independent people. I'm in charge of my life, right? Like, I get to decide what I do today. And if I stick around or whatever, right? Like, I understand that I have that choice. And still, when you work for someone else, it feels a bit like your fate is in their hands for a while, whatever amount of time that you're there. At any given day, I could wake up tomorrow, or we could end this podcast and Brett, you could be like, that was terrible, you gotta go. Like, I know you would never. And you're like, Miranda, don't even joke about that. But still, like, that possibility exists, right? Like, this job could go away from me at any given moment. And I think business owners forget or don't know what that feels like. And to tie it back, so I started by talking about big three. I fight the good fight for that tool. And the reason I do that is because it enables team owners to have as much ownership as possible in their job security. It helps them understand that what they're doing is keeping them safe. When you think about the way that, just even high level style, the way that I talked about my role at that doctor's office and the things that I kept track of and managed for him, and all of the things that I helped him build or start to build, and not, you would assume like she was golden there. She had nothing to worry about. She wasn't going anywhere. And I imagine most people that interacted with us at the time also felt the same way. I always had a bubbling anxiety, like underneath the surface, that at some point I was going to drop the ball on something major, and it was going to be the end of my role there all of a sudden. And he would probably feel terrible if he heard that I felt that way. He would never have wanted me to feel that way. But that is the truth of what it feels like to work for someone else. Even when you show up and you're doing a really good job and you're working really hard, it's up to someone else if you get to come back tomorrow. It really is. And I just would encourage business owners to consider, how they talk to their team members about how they're doing, how clear they are on what success looks like, how often they check in on if someone is doing what they should or should not be doing, because that anxiety can be kind of crushing, especially when you have when you're talking about the right hand person, right? It feels like the most amount of pressure for your team members in that spot.
So a lot of the pressure, little to no ownership in the actual equity of the business, right? But you're so close to that leader, that owner, that a lot of the pressure that he or she carries is like you feel some of that by association, and you feel a lot of it by delegation, right? Like, oh, here, take this. Yep. So you're feeling a lot of the pressure. You used the word anxiety a couple times. And this is a little, game time decision or like on the fly here, but if you had a piece of advice for a business owner who has this key right-hand person that they really lean on and rely on, what could that business owner do that would decrease the anxiety?
Really good question. Yeah, great question. I would say a couple things. As we teach it at Elite, make sure they have big three. But for anybody else who's listening, like, be really clear on what success looks like for this team member for the next amount of time, right? We talk about a quarter, right? The next 3 months. Don't go farther than that, because how many different projects could you possibly start and finish in a quarter? Even that number, it's more than you think, right? So, for the next 3 months, what does success look like for this person? What goals do you want them to hit? What projects do you want them to complete? Or if you're talking about leading the team, like, get real clear on what they need to be doing in terms of their leadership, that they can be improving on and working on. And then consistently talk to that team member about how that's coming along, right? So set really clear goals and objectives with the team member, right? If it's your right-hand person, they should know just as easily as you should what those things should be. So let them co-create with you what their main objectives should be, and then continue to check in with them on how they're coming along, right? So it's like consistent weekly one-on-ones, clear goals and objectives that are co-created. And I have to add the detail of these goals and objectives. Like if you have 20, it's too many. Like there's no way that they could possibly succeed. Like give them some focus, give them some way to know that they've won. And if you give them 10 goals and objectives and they're able to move, they complete 2, and then the other 8, they move forward a little bit, that's not going to feel like a win. They're going to get to the end of the quarter and they're going to feel like, yeah, but I left all these things hanging, right? So it's about calling your shot that way. The other thing, it seems overly simple, but it's a good reminder, is like you cannot thank your team members enough. You cannot show appreciation too much. It's just not possible. You're never going to like override.
Miranda, have I told you that I appreciate you? I'm trying to do it real time here.
Right.
And it's recorded. So could you just play this repeatedly?
Play it back. Okay, yeah. You picked up the hints there.
Right,
okay,
I'm teasing. Yeah. But no, I think you're spot on. So let you continue.
Yeah, I just think you can't overdo it. I remember when I was there and I was new to leadership, but social intelligence, it came natural to me, but I was new to leading. And when everybody would leave every day, I would thank them. And I just started doing that just because I am who I am. There was no intentionality around it. I just started, hey, thank you so much for everything you did. Thanks so much for all your help today. Thank you. Like I said it to everyone every day, every time they left. And I just started doing it. And one of our team members that was a buddy of mine. And one day I looked at him and I was like, hey, can you give it to me straight? Like, is it too much? Like when I say thank you every time, like, is it sort of like, yeah, whatever, Miranda, like you say that every day, like, blah, does it not mean, have I overdone it and now it doesn't mean anything? And he was like, don't be ridiculous. I love hearing it every single day. I was like, oh, okay. Thanks for that. Right. And it's like the smallest gesture. I'm not saying you have to thank every team member at the end of everything every day. It's just, I think, a good story or good example to share in terms of like, just, show them consistently, keep showing up and show them that you care and that you're grateful for what they're doing.
All right. Awesome. Very practical, been there, done that types of ideas. And I think most of what you just shared would fall into the category of things that maybe a visionary leader might not be doing today that they should consider beginning, like that role clarity, connecting every week and letting people know how they're doing, thanking them. Like that was in the category of they're usually not doing this and it would help if they did. Yeah. So let's go to the other side of that. On the anxiety question still, things that they do that increase anxiety that if they wouldn't do would make things a lot easier.
Oh, good. Okay. The first thing that comes to mind for me there is setting unrealistic expectations. And what's funny is the word unrealistic probably isn't the right choice, because for visionaries, everything's realistic. Yeah. We can do that. We can do that. And we can do that in 2 weeks, Miranda. What are you talking about? That's possible. What do you mean that's not possible? Right? So unrealistic probably wasn't the right word. And I don't mean to say that you have to give everybody all the time in the world for every project that you think of. But I guess it would come back to the co-creation process. Hey, if we're all going to go chase after this thing together, or even you and I are going to go chase after this next thing together, how quickly do you think we could do it? Or, what resources do you need in order to be successful? Like starting the conversation or, having a practice of having those conversations that way versus I want you to go do this thing and you got to get it done by this time. Right. That's that place from my experience and my perspective. I was like, whoa, how am I going to figure that out? But he believes in me. Right. And so,
and it's sort of like, did he forget all the other things he's asked me to do?
Right.
Like, yes. Like forget the day-to-day machine that I still make sure runs. But he also gave me this project and this project, and now he's asking me this. Did he forget all this over here?
Right. Did you forget all this over here? Or help me prioritize, right? Like that, but even that, fine. If it feels like too much of a stretch to just cross things off the list, which I know sometimes it feels like that as a 7-figure business owner, get really clear about prioritizing, like which things are most important above all else. if we got this done in this amount of time, we can feel like we succeeded, right? That conversation.
Yeah. Well, all of these have been extremely useful insights, at least in my opinion. I think our visionary business owners out there will appreciate hearing from their right-hand person, and that's who you represent today. And it might not be a perfect fit with what those right-hand people are feeling or experiencing, but I think you've opened up some eyes and ears, hopefully, to the idea that some of their amazingness might have some unintended consequence, might be creating some havoc for that person that they rely on so much. As we wrap this time up together, Miranda, and you may have shared this with me before and I don't remember, like I genuinely don't remember, but why aren't you still in that spot today? Why did you decide, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm going to do something else?
Yeah, good question. I ended up leaving that job. I moved, and actually when I moved, he still wanted me to be a big part of the business, right? So I moved. I couldn't lead the clinic anymore, but I was still leading the online space, and that's when I moved from Arizona back to North Dakota. And at that time, I decided, like, I didn't have a lot of friends that I knew in North Dakota, and I wanted to like connect with that community. I felt like a woman on an island, sort of leading a team and not really getting out there and meeting anyone. So that's why I ended up leaving, just to, get more rooted in North Dakota when we had moved back. But I think he would have kept me around for a lot longer if I would have wanted to stay. So.
Well, I'm sure he would have. He would have been stupid not to. But anyway, my point in saying that is thank you again. I want to thank you, so you don't forget how much we appreciate having you on our team. But I wonder secretly, on behalf of all the visionary leaders out there with right-hand people, how much would it take to push that super valuable teammate a little too far, right? How much would it take for them to experience burnout and say, I love you, but I just can't do this anymore. Like, it's unrealistic. It's too crazy. Like, my health isn't well. My relationships aren't well. Whatever. Like, I'm giving too much to this. And I think sometimes visionary, high power, high energy types of business owners can burn some people out on the way. And this is a person that they want to make sure is doing really well.
Yeah, if I can add something to that, Brett, I think if you're a visionary and a business owner, and even if you don't have any concerns about your right-hand person right now, odds are good they're feeling some element of something that we talked about, right? And I guess for me, the simplest or easiest action step to take in terms of making sure that your right-hand person doesn't leave because it's all too much or for whatever other reason might happen is just like communicate with them, talk to them about it. And maybe this recording, this podcast can be a way to open up that conversation. If you don't know how your right hand is feeling, or if they're close to overwhelm and leaving, if you're like, oh, I don't know, I feel like she's doing pretty good. Or maybe like, yeah, she might be on the edge of that. Either way, maybe you could share this with them and have them listen to it and then have a conversation. Like, did any of that ring true? Like, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Or what's your version of the good things that come with working with crazy me? And what's your version of the things that are a little challenging of working with wonderful me, right? Or whatever.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's been super amazing. I hope that a ton of business owners get the value out of this that I believe you've helped to create by sharing your story, Miranda. Thank you for what you do in the Elite Entrepreneurs team. Thank you for sharing with our podcast. Is there any other thing that you want to leave as a parting thought as we wrap this up?
I think I want to leave with, I hope business owners don't leave feeling like, or leave after listening to this feeling like there's something bad about the visionary, sort of being the visionary, or, if you have team members you're sort of concerned about. I also don't want you leaving with anxiety, right? Like, all of this is solvable. All of this is okay, right? But it's just having that next level of awareness and talking to your team and checking in with them. So don't let it be scary. Let it be a great, beautiful thing that starts the next level of, your teammates feeling great about being there.
Love that. Thank you again, Miranda. For all of you listening, please like, share, review, wherever you listen to your podcast. We want to make sure that this episode and all of our episodes reach as many seven-figure business owners as possible. There is a way to grow without going crazy. There are ways to find joy again in your business. There are ways to level up as a leader and to grow this thing and the impact that you can have in the world and on the people involved and that touch your business. So keep it up, and we will see you next time.
You've been listening to the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast with your host, Brett Gilliland. Be sure to leave a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. You may also want to visit our website, eliteentrepreneurspodcast.com, to find additional resources to grow your business from 7 figures to 10 million and beyond.